Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I will be introducing you to the use of the Petroleum Assays feature in Aspen Hysys for crude oil characterization, right? So now, for crude oil characterization, you could either use the oil manager, right? The oil manager right here, or you could use the Petroleum Assays, right? So in this particular video, I will be showing you how to use the Petroleum Assay for crude oil characterization. As you already know, crude oil is a mixture, right? It's a mixture, so you would not readily find it in the components list, right? You won't, if you go to the component list to search for crude oil, you won't find it there. And then you have a lot of refining simulations or refinery simulations here and there, right? So you'll be wondering how to, specify crude oil as a component, right? So it's either you use the oil manager or you use the Petroleum Assay. So in this video, I'll be showing you how to use the Petroleum Assay, right? Now, the Petroleum Assay has three options. So if you want to use it, right, you click on it, you left click on it to ensure that it's highlighted. Then you can now begin your specifications. Now, if you want to use, depending on what you want to use, the Petroleum Assay has three options. Now, at your top left, you have new assay, and then you have a drop down. If you click on the drop down, you will find the three options I'm talking about. You have import from library, import from file, and then manually enter. Now, the import from library option is used in scenarios where you want to use a crude oil, or you want to characterize a crude oil that is existing or is already in existence and is embedded in the Aspen Hysys database, right? So the database of Aspen Hysys has already characterized crudes. That is, crudes that exist in real life that have been characterized, right? Some of them are embedded, or most of them are embedded in this Aspen Hysys database, and you can access them through this import from library. Now, if you click on import from library, it gives you options to choose which of the sections you want, which of the groups you want, right? Depending on the properties of that crude, right? Depending on the properties of that crude and the kind of process you want to simulate. Now, if your crude properties does not exist, if your crude properties does not exceed temperatures of, say, this 850 degrees Celsius, right? For example, if you are using true boiling point as your assay characteristic, you are using true boiling point. Now, if it does not exceed 850 degrees, your assay data does not exceed 850 degrees, for example, you can click on this assay components Celsius to 850, right? And if you click on it, you are trying to say that whatever cuts you are having in your crude oil, whatever ranges of cuts you are having in your crude oil, they will not exceed 850 degrees Celsius, right? So depending on the kind of crude simulation you want to do, for example, if you want to do an FCC simulation, you can click on FCC components. If you want to do a hydrocracker simulation, you can click on it. So depending on what you want to do, you can choose any of these. Then you click OK, right? When you click OK, it takes you to a section where those listed crudes that have been characterized, right, that are embedded in the software, it takes you to that section where they are, which is this that's on the screen. Now, if you want to search for any kind of crude, you could do that using this search bar. So all the popular kinds of crude oil you are aware of are actually embedded here. You can find any of them here, anyone you like. You can use the search bar, or you can click on countries. Depending on the country you want to choose from, you can click on countries. For example, you want to use USA, you can click on it, right? And then you'll be able to navigate through to search for the exact one you are looking for. For example, you can see WTI, the Western Texas Intermediate is here, right? It's a kind of crude that was discovered in the United States. So depending on what you are looking for, you can actually search for them using the search bar or using the country or region sections, right? So for example, if what you want to specify is this Western Texas, you click on it and then you click OK. Still loading. Now once you click OK, the crude, the characteristics of the crude automatically appears, right? Because these crudes have already been characterized, right, beforehand. So it doesn't need any additional characterization. The data, the results will appear automatically, right? Because they are already characterized. These are crudes that exist in real life. So they have already been characterized, and the characterization data is already embedded in the software. So once you click on them and you specify them, the data just comes up immediately, and you can check for whatever you want to check, right? You can check the results, depending on what you are looking for. You can check the results, right? So depending on what you are looking for, you can check the results. Now, if you want to check for plots with respect to that particular crude that has been characterized, you can click on this, right? The plot gallery. Let's go back. You have the plots gallery here, so you can check for different kind of plots depending on what you are looking for. The viscosity plot. So that's how it is. The use of the library is straightforward because the crudes embedded in the library have already been characterized, right? Now, you notice that when we started this, we didn't specify the component list or the fluid package, right? So that is one of the advantages of using the Petroleum Assay. So in the use of the Petroleum Assay, you don't need to specify components or fluid package. You just go ahead to specify which of the methods you want to use, either the manually enter or import from library or import from file. So once you specify that, or you specify those, the components and the fluid package are automatically added, right? They are automatically added, and then you can specify the characteristics in case you are manually entering the data. But in this case, we have used the assay library, and at this point we can start a simulation, right? A refining process or a crude oil simulation, whatever it is, right? Because the components have been specified, the fluid packages has been, the property package has been specified, the crude has already been characterized, right? So anytime you want to know if your crude has been characterized or not, you just look out for this OK, right? This green bar. Once you see it, you know that the crude has been characterized, and you can now start your simulation, right? So this is specific for crude oil simulations, right? This is actually specific for simulations that involve crude oil. Now, that is for the first one, which is the import from library. Then the second one is import from file. So if you have a document that contains the properties of a particular crude oil you want to simulate your process with, you can actually import it using this import from file. So you just need to click on it, right? Click on it, then click on this plus button. Though there are different formats you can choose from, right? But when you choose your format, then you click on this plus button, right? So you choose, I don't think I have such files here, but if you have such, you choose from whichever folder it is, then you click open, and then you import. So that's how that one works. Then for the third one, which I may take my time on, is the manually enter. So if you want to characterize a crude oil manually, you have to use that option, the manually enter option, right? And that's what I'll be illustrating in this tutorial. For the manual input, still the same procedure. You click on the Petroleum Assay, then click on new assay, then click on manually enter. So in the manually enter option, you get the opportunity to specify the basic characteristics of the crude, right, yourself. You get the opportunity to input the characteristics, the properties yourself, right, before the remaining properties are calculated and then results are generated by Hysys. Now in this tutorial, we'll be using just a crude sample with very basic data. So this is what we have. So we'll be specifying all of this in the Petroleum Assay manually. Now here you have the opportunity to put in your assay characteristics, right? In this case, we are making use of true boiling point. Then we are going to be using the single stream properties, which is this one. Now the multi-cut properties, in the case of the multi-cut, you are given the opportunity to characterize your cuts in batches, right? In different batches. There's different temperature ranges for your cuts, while in the single stream, you are specifying all your cuts in one particular batch. Then in the back blending is a scenario where you use the characteristics of the products, that's the cuts, to determine the properties of the crude feed. So the characteristics of the product you get from refining your crude is what is used to specify the properties of the crude feed, right? So in the case of back blending, you will need to get the characteristics of the cuts, the refinery products experimentally, and then use it as a basis for specifying the properties of the feed, right? But in this case, we'll just be using the single stream properties, because all our assay data was given in the single stream format, right? The assay data is in the single stream format, so that is what we'll be using to specify the assay data. Right, so we have 0, then we have -12. So you can change the already existing values, the default values. If they don't match what you have in your data, you can actually change them. If you want to increase the number of rows you have, you can do that by highlighting the last row and then right clicking, then you click on insert row. So that inserts more rows to what you have. So add one more, right? So just right click at the last one, then click insert row. This should be 80 actually. Once you are done inputting the assay values, right, you then click OK. Now once you click OK, you can now specify the other characteristics of the crude, right? You can specify the other characteristics. Now we can specify the properties of the pure components, right? The properties of the pure components from our data. You have the light ends here, which are also the pure components, and then you have their liquid volume percentage. That is the data we'll be adding here. So from here, the components we have in our data are not complete, so we have to add those ones that are not here present. You can do that by clicking on the plus sign. You click on it. When you click on it, this comes up, right? So you can either search from the all menu, or you could narrow down to any of these groups, right? You can search from here, from all, or you narrow down. So for example, we are looking for I-pentane and N-pentane, and both of them are C5 components, right? They are C5 components. You can click on C5. Okay, so we'll be using C5. This is C5, and to be more specific, we will use the C5 paraffin, right? Paraffin is for alkanes, while olefin is for alkenes, right? Alkenes. Yeah, so we use paraffin. So paraffin gives us I-pentane, right? Which you can click here, right? So it has been added to the list. Now we need to add the next one, right? We need to add the next one. Let me see if I press enter. Okay, exiting this bar is quite tricky. So what I usually do is I click on another section and then I come back to it, right? Because I think when you try to scroll down here, it may exit the software entirely, right? Whatever you are specifying here, sometimes when you are specifying and it hooks, it may just exit the software. So you have to be careful while specifying whatever it is you are specifying here. So now I have come back to the pure components section. Now I want to add another component, which is N-pentane. So I can press enter. Okay, let me see if I click enter. Yes. So what you do is you highlight the last component you have on that list, right? And then you click on enter on your keyboard so that the plus sign appears again, and then you click on it. You double click on that plus sign, right? You double click on it to add a new component, right? So we are still making use of C5. We are still making use of C5 paraffin, and in this case we want to add N-pentane. So you just click on the tick box, and N-pentane has been added. Don't bother scrolling down here. If you scroll down here, you probably exit the software. I don't know why that happens, but it happens when I do it, and then you may not be able to exit this from here as well. So once you specify the components, you just go to another form. Then if you want to specify another component, you just come back and then you repeat the same process and click on enter so that the plus sign comes back, and then you are able to specify the next component, right? I don't know why that happens, but it happens when I try using this the scroll down feature on the right. So now we are done adding the components. We can now specify their values from the table we have here. So for methane is 0.0065, right? So we are done specifying the data for the pure components. We can now specify the properties of the crude oil itself, right? You can do that from the input summary. From the input summary, you can specify the properties of the crude, like the liquid density, sulfur weight, the kinematic viscosity, paraffin percentage, naphthene's percentage, olefins percentage, aromatic percentage, pour point, cloud point, smoke point, etc. Right? Then if you want to add more properties and specify them, you can do that via the plus sign, right? Any property that is not on the list already, you can add it to the list and specify it if you have such data, right? But the data we are using in this case is very, very basic, doesn't have so much in it, right? What we have here is just the standard density, right? Just the standard density, which we can specify at the top. The top, you have 29 API 60, 29 API 60. So from the drop down, I think there is no API 60 here. So I will manually convert from API 60 to kg per meter cube and input the value here. So for the value in kg per meter cube, it's 879.8, right? So a recap of what we've done so far. Now you need to specify in the manually enter, you need to specify the properties of the crude, then the properties of the pure components present in the crude, then the assay data, right? Those are the three sections you need to specify before you characterize the crude, right? So you specify the assay data, the data for the pure components, and then the crude properties, right? So in this case, our data is not so much, right? But when you have detailed data, you need to specify all of these, right, before you characterize. So like I said, you specify the properties of the pure components, and then the assay data. Now for the assay data, you have the opportunity to choose your curve type, right? Your curve type depending on the data you have, right? But in this case, we are making use of the true boiling point, right? So they have the others. The others are there. You have D86, D2887, D1160. So depending on the kind of data you have to choose the curve type before you now specify the assay data. Then also your basis too is very important. Your basis is very important, right? I think this case it's volume. The data we have is based on liquid volume, right? It's based on liquid volume. So from there we specify volume, not mass. So depending on what you have, right, that still depends on what you have. So these are very important when you are trying to characterize crude. You ensure you know the curve type, you are making use of the basis, then the units. If it is in Celsius, most of the time it's usually in either Celsius or Fahrenheit. So depending on whichever it is, or even Kelvin, whichever it is, you choose that before you start entering the assay data, right? So take note of these: the curve type, basis, the units, right? Then also, okay, you can't change the percentage. Okay, so that's it. So once you've specified those three sections, you can then click on Characterize Assay right here, right? So you see the bar says the assay is uncharacterized. So you click on Characterize Assay. Once it's done characterizing, you'll get the OK message. Yeah, so that's it. You have the OK message. So this crude, of which we have specified its properties, has now been characterized, right? So you will get results based on the input you specified, right? Based on the input you specified, the results for this particular characterization is generated, right? So from your input summary, okay, now we'll scroll down. Okay, not from here, let me see. Okay, this is still the input. So if you want to check the results, right, if you want to check the results, you click on, under the Petroleum Assay, you click on conventional results, right? Conventional results. So we specified just the liquid density, right? So but the other parameters, a couple of them have been calculated by Hysys, right? But not all of them. There are some that must be specified, right? There are some that must be specified, like the sulfur by weight. The sulfur percentage in a crude cannot be calculated by Hysys. It has to be specified by the user, right? Same with the other elements like nitrogen by weight. So you have to specify it yourself. There are some of them you have to specify yourself, while there are some that Hysys can calculate, right? So Hysys calculates mostly the properties you did not specify, right? It uses what you specified to calculate what you didn't specify. So that's for that. Then you have your property table. Then you have messages. Distillation was the one we specified. You have messages here, right? So if you have if there are issues with your characterization, you most likely get error messages here, right? So those error messages will guide you on what to change, right? Values to alter before you can now do the characterization again. So in this case, it says there is no distillation input above 90%. This can lead to unreliable results, right? So this is a demo, more like a demo simulation, right? Just to explain how it works. So, and if you check our inputs, you will see that we stopped at, for the distillation data, the assay data, we stopped at 80, right? And that message said there is no distillation input above 90. So the message is actually correct because our distillation input stopped at 80, right? So if you want to change that, you can go back to your input assay, right? You can add more data if you have. So this is just an example. Let me see. Let's see if I can edit. Okay, yes. So I just wanted to add to it. Then you have, let's say this is 550. Then you have 95. Let's assume we had more data to input. Then you have, let me say 580. So this is just an illustration. So now when you alter the initial input you've made, when you alter it, you will need to click on Characterize Assay afterward, right? So whenever you change any of the inputs you initially specified, after that you will need to click on Characterize Assay. See, so the assay has been characterized again now with respect to the changes we've made, right? And if you go back to that message bar, you don't have any error messages again, right? Because the error has been worked on, right? And the assay, the crude oil, has been characterized once again, right? So this message bar will help you check for errors in your characterization, right? So that's it for that. What else do we have? Then yes, if you want to specify description of your crude, you can do that here under the Petroleum Assay. The first bar you have, right, is just a description, like a place where you can input the description of that crude. For example, where it is located, the region, the country, the name of the oil field. Then you can input sample information, just something like a brief description of that particular crude you are characterizing, right? So this is where you can do that immediately after Petroleum Assay, right? You can do that here. Just click on it. So from wherever you are, if you are in the results, you can just click on it. Or if you are in input assay, you can click on it just to specify or give a brief description of the kind of crude you are trying to characterize, right? This is where you can do that. Then again, as we did in the initial characterization we did for the library crude, where we use WTI, here you can also, just like there, you can also check the plot gallery, right? You can check that. You can check the cut yield. You have the cut yield, the different cuts that you can get from refining the crude feed, right? Their percentage, like how much of it is produced. So you have cut yield by percent. Yeah, cut yield by weight percent. Then other plots are also there for you. You have the distillation plot. You have the distillation plot. The distillation plot is based on the assay data we specified. Actually, this distillation plot, right, you can see the temperature. It goes up to close to 600. Then you have the property plot, then the viscosity plot as well. Let's see. So you still have other plots here, right? You still have other plots that you can check. So if you want to check more of the plots, you can use the drop down in the plot gallery, right? So that's it. So now the crude has been successfully characterized. All the data is here in the conventional results section, right? Now you can use this crude now to start a simulation, right? So if you want to start a simulation now, a process that involves crude oil, you can do that right now. All you need to do is to get into the simulation environment, right? Just get into the simulation environment and start your simulation. Now, before we go there, I would like to show you something. Now, in the assay section, you have generate report, right? So now you have gotten some results from this characterization and you can export it to Excel, right? You can export it to Excel. If you want to do that, you click on generate report, right? And then you click on assay name. Just click on the box. Then you click on next, right? You click on next. Then you tick the stuffs you would like to appear in the report. You ensure that they are ticked. If you want, you can tick everything depending, right? So you tick what you want to see in the report, the attributes you want to find in the report, the Excel sheet. Then you click next. Also, you still do that here as well. That's if everything is not, but I think everything here is ticked. So if everything is not ticked, you may want to tick them, check them, and be sure they are, everything you want to see in the report is represented. Then you still click on next, right? Then you click on next again. Yeah. And then you click generate report. Right, you click generate report. Then you can save the name, specify the name you want to save the report as. So I'll just say manual assay. Just click. Then you choose the folder where you want to save it. You choose the folder where you want to save it, and then you click save. So this is the report. The report generated based on the calculations done by Hysys. Right. This is the report. This is it. So that's it for the report generation. That's it for the report generation. You have your liquid, standard liquid density in API, then the other properties of the crude, right? So this is the report that has been generated by Hysys based on the characterization of the crude. Now, like I said before, let's exit this. You can start a simulation with this characterized crude, right? Because you have characterized it, the components have been specified in the component list, right? The components have been specified and a fluid package has automatically been chosen for the process. So everything that needs to be specified has been specified, you can get into the simulation environment and start simulating your process, right? So now if you want to simulate a process using a crude that was characterized via the Petroleum Assays feature, now when you are creating your crude stream in the simulation environment, you click on the Petroleum Assays section, or let me change it to crude oil rather. Crude oil. So you click on this Petroleum Assays section, right? For any of the methods you used, whether the import file, the import from library, or the manually enter, whichever of the options you used, the process here in the simulation environment is the same. You click on Petroleum Assay, then you click attach existing, right? You click attach existing, then you check the drop down for the already installed crude oil and you click on it. So the crude oil we characterized in this case is assay 1. So you just click on it, right? And it says assay attached. Now what this does is it automatically specifies the composition, right? So you don't need to manually enter the composition anymore. All you have to do is to specify the conditions of that stream, right? Just the conditions. So just an example for you to see. So for example, I use this, right? And then I specify the STD ideal, right, as maybe 2000 barrel per day, 2000 BPD, 2000, sorry, I want to use 2000 BPD specifically, just for illustration's sake, BPD, yeah, right? So this is 2000 BPD, which is 13.25 meter cube per hour, right? So once you specify the process conditions, you do not need to specify composition like in other simulations, right? You know, generally you have to specify composition as well before the stream will be fully specified. In the case of using the Petroleum Assay, all you need to do is to attach existing assay and then specify your conditions and your stream will be fully specified, right? So now this is the end of this particular video tutorial, right? If you have questions or suggestions, you can drop them in the comment section. Like this video, share with your friends, and then follow us if you have not done that yet, right? Thank you for joining me in this lecture. Do have a good day.